Welcome to The Current by TreasureCoast.com, where we discuss interesting people, places, and happenings on Florida's Treasure Coast.
I'm glad we could talk. I know we originally connected about Newfield. Obviously, your family's got a history here. Newfield's been top of mind, and there's information that you probably have that's worth sharing, especially with Newfield being a very popular community as of now, politically and with people who are moving to the area. So maybe we start by you just giving an introduction to who you are and your family.
Hi, Josh. It's great to be with you today. I've viewed a number of your shows in the past, and they're always very interesting. I like the way there's enough time to air an issue and go off on tangents or whatever. I'm Knight Kiplinger. I divide my time between a longtime family home on Sewell's Point and a farm in Maryland where I'm sitting today. It's not much cooler up here than it is in Florida. It's kind of a toss-up. But my family has been in Martin County for 75 years, ever since I was a very little boy. And we had participated in the civic life of Martin County and the business life of Martin County for a very long time. We like to think that we have been part creators and nurturers of the Martin County difference for a very long time. And like to talk today a little bit about Newfield. And first of all, it should be said that I have no financial interest in the growing community of Newfield today, no role in the project officially, no financial stake. So I have no pride of ownership, but I do have some pride of authorship. The idea of Newfield, the concept, the vision for Newfield was mine and mine alone starting more than 8 years ago. A vision for a special piece of land that my family had owned in Palm City for more than 40 years. I wanted to do something special with this land, something that was environmentally sensitive, that checked a variety of boxes of Martin County's needs for employment space, place where local companies could grow and take shape and add good jobs to our community, new playing fields for our community, new recreational spaces, new natural spaces for hiking and all sorts of outdoor activities, and of course, new homes, a variety of new homes, multi-generational, a compact new town. And first of all, something about the location. Sometimes it's referred to as Western County or the Western Lands, which is hilarious to me. Newfield lies right along the Florida Turnpike, directly across the Turnpike from Martin Downs in Palm City, which is not West County. It lies directly below Port St. Lucie. It lies on the Martin County, St. Lucie County line. So the suburbia of Port St. Lucie lies across the C-23 from Newfield. Newfield, in a sense, was an enormous infill site at 3,400 acres. People thought of it as, rural, western Martin County, when in fact, it was a huge expanse of land surrounded by suburbia on all sides and had been for many years. Martin Downs on the east, out to the west, Cobblestone and Stewart West, communities that had been there since the 1980s. So Newfield lies entirely inside I-95 between the Florida Turnpike and I-95. And when people say, well, it used to be agriculture, and you used to have cows grazing there. Well, that's true, and it's still true today. There are cows grazing at Newfield today, and I expect that they will be there for years and years to come because they have their own dedicated space, hundreds of acres of pasture where Florida beef cattle continue to graze today, even as this compact new village grows up inside them. A lot of people become aware of a community when it breaks ground, when something is happening there, new houses are built. And about 2 years ago, some people were surprised to see a new compact town center sprouting along Newfield Parkway, between Martin Highway on the south and the C-23 Becker Road on the north. But people who are surprised either didn't live in Martin County 8 or 9 years ago when I first proposed Newfield, or maybe they lived in the county, but they weren't paying much attention. But it's instructive to go back 8 or 9 years and look at the reception, the very positive reception that Newfield got when I first proposed it. I told the people of Martin County that I wanted to meet with them in small groups and large groups, neighborhood by neighborhood, and describe my vision for a new kind of community, unlike any suburban development, not just in our county, but on the Treasure Coast back then. I don't like suburban sprawl, but strangely enough, in this county that always prided itself on enlightened, smart growth, suburban sprawl was easier to do by right in Martin County than something more innovative that preserved a lot of land and created a walkable town center. So I went around and I met with people all over the county and talked about this vision. Before I submitted an application, I asked their ideas. What would you like to see in a new community if we could design it from scratch on a blank sheet of paper on this beautiful expanse of land? And one thing they said is, we'd like a multi-generational community with all kinds of housing and size of housing, size of residential units, where empty nesters selling a large suburban home in Martin County, perhaps in a big gated golf course community, could move to a smaller house in a friendly neighborhood town setting. We'd like a neighborhood where our children who grew up in Martin County might be able to afford to live instead of the mega mansions that we're building in parts of Martin County today. They'd like a community that had some housing for single people, for young couples, for families with children, for empty nesters, for retirees, all mixed up together, not separated, segregated by age and price of housing, but all mixed up together. And interestingly, this is the way towns grew organically in America 100 years ago, 80 years ago. A lot of the small towns that people in Martin County grew up in themselves. So Josh, when I went around and showed people photos of communities that I liked the look of, that embody these characteristics of small, friendly neighborhoods with a mix of people, no gates, no big golf courses, no big homes on fairways, but kind of a friendly small town designed with neighborliness and friendliness intact, designed neighborly by design. They liked the idea. They liked the idea fine. And I said, what else would you like to see in a new community? And they said, well, lots of open space, lots of natural space preserved for everybody's enjoyment. Now, our family had a reputation for fostering open space and natural lands in Martin County for a long time. The Kiplinger Preserve on Canner Highway by the Indian Street Bridge, the Veterans Memorial Bridge, that 100-acre plus natural preserve on the St. Lucie River, made possible by our family through sale to the state and the county and by donation of some of it. But I said at Newfield, 70% of the land will be open space. 70% of the 3,400 acres will be open forever. A mix of natural land, today's Kiplinger Conservancy and the Kiplinger Conservancy Trail System, and other kinds of public open space. Ball fields, soccer fields for young people to play. Quite a shortage in Martin County of playing fields. And now at Newfield, there are 3 gorgeous natural grass soccer fields right across from the town center in Newfield. Small parks, pocket parks, village greens. If there is a need for new schools out in Palm City someday from the natural population growth that will occur, there are 3 school sites built into Newfield. Not as big as the traditional school sites because they're going to be right in the town center, and some kids will be able to walk to school. A lot of people coming to my neighborhood meetings at night. I remember when I walked to school as a kid in the town I grew up in wherever, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Kentucky, and our kids walked to school where we lived. But today we have acres of carpool lines. So the school sites at Newfield will be built into the community, and if they are needed someday, elementary, middle, high school, they're all accounted for. Agriculture. Yes, this 3,400 acres, a lot of it had been in agriculture before. And the Kiplinger family, we didn't want to leave agriculture. We didn't want to knock down the citrus trees and plow them under and sell everything for development. Mother Nature put us out of the citrus business. Josh, you might recall that Martin County was once huge in citrus, the famed Indian River Citrus District, famous for its fresh fruit. Well, we had a model grove of almost 1,000 acres where Newfield stands today, and a series of natural disasters, Mediterranean fruit fly and citrus canker, and the final blow was a blight called greening. And it basically destroyed our grove and many other groves in Martin County. And our big grove right there at Newfield was in Palm City, right along the Florida Turnpike, and a wonderful grove. And we'd still be in the citrus business today, but for that blight. So this is the situation 8 years ago. I proposed something altogether new. It was not going to be leapfrog development. That's a pejorative term for a new community that jumps out into the western lands of Martin County over space in between. No, this was just a natural extension of Palm City, just across the road from Martin Downs, near Palm City Farms, the beautiful equestrian neighborhood. And I said, I'd like to do something special on this site. And the by right zoning struck me as inappropriate, carving up this beautiful piece of land into 5-acre ranchettes, little mini estates on 5 acres with a huge house in the middle of the land, a nice enclave for 600 special people who could afford a huge house on 5 acres in Palm City. But I wanted to create something special that would have benefits to the county, a different kind of community for all different demographics, all in one place. It required actually an amendment to the comp plan. People say, well, Knight, you can't amend the Martin County comp plan. It's the Great Wall of China. It's the Maginot Line. It's all those things. And I said, well, the urban service boundary goes right through this property. It's not way outside the urban service boundary. About 300 acres of Newfield are inside Martin County's urban services boundary. We had public utilities, sewer and water, right at the property line of the future Newfield. So we sort of viewed the urban services line that went through our property like a rubber band, and we pulled a little bit west to pull in this new compact town center that is on public utilities, not well and septic. And the Kiplinger Conservancy, I pointed out to people, at 1,000 acres is bigger than Martin County's largest public park, Halpatioke, along the Florida Turnpike, there by Canner Highway. Halpatioke has about 600 acres. The Kiplinger Conservancy at Newfield open to all of the residents of Martin County, all the residents of anywhere. It's like a public park, but in the private ownership of Newfield. It's available to everybody at 1,000 acres, almost 50% larger than the existing county park, but with no expensive burden of management on the county. So these are some of the characteristics. Agriculture lives on at Newfield. There are a lot of trendy neighborhoods around America today called agri-hoods, and they have a cutesy little community farm, of 2 acres or something with garden plots for the neighbors and maybe a CSN farmer's market on Saturday. The Kiplinger family has been in agriculture for a long time in Maryland and in Florida. And I decided that agriculture would live on at Newfield in a meaningful, significant way, not just a symbolic token way. So Newfield Farm, which is up and running and a delight to behold, is 125 acres with row crops. We're going to introduce organic citrus back at Newfield with new citrus stock, which is resistant to the greening blight. Josh, have you seen Newfield? Have you visited it?
Yeah, I've been there a couple of times, and I do know what you mean, because I was born and raised in Palm City. So, I tell people a lot. I mean, I've said this on a few recent podcasts now, like when Becker was a dirt road, so I've been, that if you take 714 or if you go up Citrus kind of towards Port St. Lucie, I'm familiar with that area a lot. And I kind of like you had mentioned, I do remember when Newfield was kind of being proposed. And I think a lot of times as years go on, people go, oh, what's going on with that? Or maybe it pops up every now and then. And I'm interested to know, how is because like you had said, your family, has been acquiring land. You've been involved in other green spaces. What is the plan, or, was something like Newfield always kind of in the works? Hey, maybe we'll kind of do something like this. Or is it just something that you thought would be a good use of that particular land at the time?
Well, Josh, it's a little of both. First of all, we are a family of journalists, financial journalists and publishers, best known for the Kiplinger Letters, Kiplinger's personal finance magazine, Kiplinger.com. That has been our family profession, our family's calling for 3 generations. And what we did with the earnings of publishing over decades, we made passive investments, as any prudent family should, and we liked land. The Kiplingers are descended from Pennsylvania German farmers who went to Ohio in the early 1800s and farmed in Ohio, and then came back east as a journalist in 1914. So we like land, we like agriculture. I'm talking to you today from my family farm in Maryland, a 400-acre farm, not far from Washington, D.C., that has been in our family, 60-some years, actually not as long as our historic home on Sewell's Point, but 60-some years. And here at my farm in Maryland, we have commodity crops, soybeans and corn. We have sheep, 250 sheep and chickens. So agriculture has been in the Kiplinger family blood for a long time. So my preference for a beautiful piece of land is not just to sell it for whatever the prevailing land use is in the neighborhood. If there is a better land use, a better plan, a better design that I can come up with. This is not the first innovative town plan that our family was involved with. We created a new planned community north of Washington, D.C. in Frederick County, Maryland, called the Villages of Urbana. 30-some years ago, 35 years ago, I took a beautiful piece of land through this same careful planning process and development process. And today, Urbana, Maryland is considered one of the best places to live in America. It sometimes makes lists of the 100 best places, neighborhood, family, community places in America, things like that. So there we were in Martin County with 3,400 acres that we had owned for 40 years. And yeah, the easy thing to do would have been to sell it for buy right development. Large lot development, probably another gated golf course community. And Martin County has many beautiful gated golf course communities.
Oh, so Knight, had it been, maybe I misunderstood you. Was it agricultural land before you had submitted the application, or it was by right, like a PUD, before you had come up with the Newfield idea?
Oh, no, it was agricultural land for 40 some years. Some of it, like 1,000 acres of it, had been cleared and developed as agriculture, and 2,400 acres was the beautiful natural open space, the scrub pines, the wetlands, the saw palmetto, the scrub oak, which is the Kiplinger Conservancy today. So
Right.
it had all been zoned ag. I've heard people misstate that it was 20-acre zoning. It was never 20-acre zoning. It had been 5-acre ranchettes on well and septic zone for that for a long time. And the area of Newfield lying along the Florida Turnpike, 300 some acre, had been zoned by Martin County for decades as its prime employment ground, the largest piece of ground where a relocating employer bringing good jobs to Martin County, or local businesses wanting to grow their businesses and needing more space, could find the space for that. I once called it the Martin Enterprise Park before I conceived a Newfield. It was already zoned for light industrial, warehouse and distribution space, a variety of uses. So at Newfield today, there are signs along Newfield Parkway announcing the Newfield Employment District. And that is land inside the urban service boundary that has been zoned by Martin County for that commercial purpose for decades, even before I conceived of Newfield. But at Newfield, I designed that employment district and the new town center of Newfield and the open space and the school sites and the neighborhoods. I designed it as a comprehensive whole. Brilliant planners worked on this plan 8 years ago. Locally, Marcella Camblor, the national firm of Dover Cole and Associates, who are famous for this traditional neighborhood design. They worked on the team with me. So this is how Newfield evolved. The greening blight was destroying our groves. We knew we had to exit that business. The time seemed ripe. Martin County had a severe housing shortage. Arguably, it still does have a housing shortage. You know, Martin County is a slow growth county. If you see a new neighborhood down the block from you or whatever it might be, you say, well, gee, I thought we had slowed down growth in our county, and here I see something new. Martin County typically grows in a typical year at less than 0.5% of its population. It has a growth rate that is just 1/3 or 1/2 of the state of Florida, which is good. That's the Martin County difference. Florida is a high growth state. Martin County is a slow growth county within Florida. And we all like it that way. We want moderate growth. We want smart growth. You know, going back 8 years, it's interesting to see who didn't oppose Newfield at the time and who actually said positive things about Newfield. The guardians of Martin County down in the Hobe Sound area are great watchdogs of growth in our county and the environment. The guardians of Martin County liked our project. I met with them individually and as a group, and they wrote very positive things on their website about Newfield as a new prototype for better suburban development in Martin County. Nathaniel Reed of Jupiter Island, Nat Reed, the high priest of environmental protection in Martin County, indeed a national leader in environmental protection. Before Nat Reed's tragic death a number of years ago in a fly fishing accident, Nat Reed and I met with members of the staff of his 1,000 Friends of Florida. Nat Reed liked Newfield. I pulled out of the drawer a study that the 1,000 Friends of Florida had done 10 years before called Smart Growth for Martin County. And I opened up this plan that his own organization had written, and I started reading from it. And I said, Mr. Reed, this is Newfield. And he said, darn right. That sounds like what we had in mind. Nathaniel Reed, the Guardians of Martin County, Maggie Herchala, the high priestess of slow growth in Martin County. I met with Maggie a number of times. I didn't expect Maggie to endorse Newfield, and she didn't, but she didn't oppose it either. We talked a number of times over long breakfasts in Stewart, and she recognized that this was a better thing to do with this large piece of land than some of the by right alternatives. The Stewart News, T.C. Palm, covered this project and my proposals very extensively. All the stories were written by Gil Smart, who now heads Vote Water in Martin County. Gil's a wonderful guy, a fine journalist, and a great environmentalist.
Yeah, we've talked with Gil on the podcast here as well. Yeah.
And Gil Smart's stories, I remember one of his stories about Newfield when it was going through the proposal process. It said, where's the kaboom? Where's the outcry? Where's the objection to Knight Kiplinger's Newfield proposal? It's so different. Why aren't people manning the ramparts? 40 years before, people opposed Martin Downs as some sort of desecration of the environment in Martin County. Today, 40 years later, we think of Martin Downs as a beautiful community in Martin County. But answering his own question in that Stewart News story, Gil Smart wrote, there's no kaboom, there's no outcry, because if there's anybody in Martin County who has not met Knight Kiplinger and talked to him about his concepts and his proposal, I don't know where that person is living. Maybe they don't have a pulse. And it's true. When I met with people, described the concept, showed them photos of real communities in America designed by this concept of traditional neighborhood design, they liked it. I said, would you like to live in a town that looks like this? And they said, wow, yeah, I would. Sidewalks, front porches, garages behind the house, in alleys, and kids could ride their bikes in the alley, or they can ride their bikes down the sidewalk of the neighborhood without dodging 10 cars backing out of front-loading garages facing the street. So that's how it evolved, and it's really going very well. It's been a building for almost 2 years now. There are about 220 families living at Newfield. Whenever I'm in town, and I will be in a week or two, I'll drive out to Newfield. I'll walk around the neighborhoods and talk to people. You can walk down the sidewalk, and if somebody's sitting on their front porch, you can say, good afternoon, how are you? And they'll wave back. And I say, when did you move into Newfield? They say, well, we moved in a month ago. I say, how do you like it? And they say, oh, we love it. We've met more neighbors in 1 month at Newfield than we met in 2 years in our previous large lot gated golf course community, someplace else in Martin County or in Palm Beach County. So people like it.
Yeah, that's funny that you say that, because I think, there's always the like you had mentioned, the Martin County difference, and there's always this pushback between people. Nobody wants to turn into like Boca Raton. I think that's the big thing, where they look at something like Newfield. I think a lot of people see the green space. A lot of people see the benefits, and who knows what that whole area will look like. And I don't want to like put you on the spot, but what are your thoughts on what could or should be done with some of the other land? I know, part of what you'd mentioned is maybe like the 5-acre zoning maybe is egalitarian. It might not be affordable for the average person. There is development, like you had said, just east of 95, where you got Cobblestone, Stewart West. Is your thought that these kind of towns, I don't know if like a town or township or micro town would be the right word, you kind of correct me, but would something like that be the best fit for some of these lands out there? And in what way would that be done where you're preserving the Martin County difference? I know for a lot of people, they don't want to get down the rabbit hole of, providing land use changes and variances to everyone. But then some people say, well, look, responsible growth means you provide those when the timing or the idea or the team is right. I don't have all the answers, but I think I'd be interested to hear from your point of view what that all looks like.
Those are great questions, Josh, and I don't have any perfect answers. Let me talk about the Western lands, however you define it. There's the near Western lands, which lie pretty close to the urban service boundary, pretty close to 95. Then you have the far lands. Now, Martin County is blessed to have some spectacular large open spaces in the far west. Allapattah, Dupuy, you've got the wonderful thoroughbred operation at Payson Park on the way out to Indiantown, and you have a lot of these great open spaces. And Martin County now has a land acquisition fund to actually buy special open space in the county. My preference, actually, instead of buying the land outright, which is very expensive, the county could also buy the development rights, sever the development rights off a large piece of land, and the land stays in the original owner's possession, but he may not develop it. My farm here in Maryland, from which I'm talking right now, 400 acres, has no development rights left on it because our family sold the development rights to our county government, Martin County, about 40 years ago. So the land will remain open space forever, but the county doesn't have to maintain it. Martin County should look at both direct acquisition of lands and the purchase of development rights. Now, we have a new kind of community growing up in Martin County. The rural lifestyle community. We have Atlantic Fields, we have Apogee, we have the Ranch, and that was a new land use category. Some people love it because relatively few houses for the very rich are built on these new gated enclaves, and there's a lot of open space. So it does preserve land. It's low density development. It's not my cup of tea generally because I'm not sort of an elitist guy. I don't like exclusive gated enclaves for the super rich, and that's what these rural lifestyle communities are. But if your primary concern is few houses on large pieces of land and a lot of open space, they accomplish it. It's not public open space. It's not available for the enjoyment of the public. It's available for the people in the community. So that is a kind of development. And then all over Martin County, we have a lot of small infill development by national home builders like Lennar and Horton and Pulte that are building single-family detached communities and townhouse communities just all over the county by right. The land is entitled. They may do that. There's going to be much more population growth from these infill communities by national home builders than there will be at Newfield. Newfield seems to attract a lot of attention because it's so innovative, but actually the housing totals will probably be greater at these more conventional suburban communities around the county. So yes, we maintain the Martin County difference. We respect the urban service boundary. We don't leap over it, leapfrog development. I'm not proposing that we create more new fields out in the west of Martin County. Frankly, I don't trust other landowners and visionaries to put in the years of attention and planning that I put into Newfield. If somebody wants to do that and come up with a proposal that's as good as Newfield in the right location at the right time, I hope the county will consider it and give it due attention. But frankly, I set the bar pretty high with 70% open space, with the Kiplinger Conservancy, with the enormous Newfield Farm, with the careful design of the town center by skilled town centers and architects. I set the bar high. There are people who say, well, Knight, there will never be another Newfield in Martin County. They might be right. Whether that's good or bad, I leave to the public to decide, but they're probably right, because it was a great deal of work and the community embraced it. I put in a lot of attention on listening to the community.
Yeah, I appreciate, sorry, I always mute and then I forget to unmute. I appreciate you elaborating on that, Knight, and we're kind of coming up on time. Is there anything that you feel we did not cover? I mean, particularly, I know we covered a lot about, what went into Newfield itself. I appreciate you touching a little bit on, hey, what can be done with the surrounding lands, maybe elaborating more on the time that went into it. I think bringing up maybe some of the more national builders is an interesting point, because we see that a lot. Before we wrap up, what is kind of the overarching theme, or is there something else that you think we should have touched on that we didn't?
Well, to preserve the Martin County difference, I hope that our Board of County Commissioners, whatever the composition of that future board, I hope that they demand of an applicant that the applicant has put as much time into careful planning and listening to the community as I did in creating Newfield. I remember during the hearings, Commissioner Hurd said, well, Knight, there's some good things about this plan. It looks pretty good, but I don't trust that it will be built. I don't trust that if you sell this project, as I did, to a master developer, as I did to Madame Homes, I don't trust that they will execute your vision. And I said, Mrs. Hurd and fellow commissioners, you are approving a plan that is so explicit and carefully drawn and so tightly drawn that any successive owner of my project, my vision, will have to follow my plan, hold them to it. And Madame Homes is doing just that. They are executing my vision very, very well at Newfield, which is why I have this pride of authorship. A year or so ago, I went out to Newfield, and my wife and I crashed a new residence reception at Newfield. Just showed up unannounced, introduced ourselves, and people were exciting to meet us. One of them lives on Ann Street in Newfield, named after my wife. And I asked them, they looked like the Newfield resident profile that I had envisioned from the very beginning. There at the new residence reception were young families, couples with no children, empty nesters who had moved to Newfield from other places. And I asked them why they chose Newfield, and they ticked off exactly the reasons that I had hoped that they would mention: a sense of community, closeness, friendliness, the pocket parks, the village greens, the commons. And retail is coming very soon. I hadn't mentioned that. The retail in the town center will be growing over the next year or so: an Italian restaurant, a coffee shop, the eye doctor, things of that sort, talking to grocers, maybe a small grocer, a special kind of grocer that doesn't duplicate other things in the community. So this is what it's all about. And if the county ever approves another Newfield, I hope that they'll hold it to the same high standards.
That's a great talking point, or a great piece to end on there, Knight. And thank you so much for talking with me. It's been good talking to you the last few days. I'm glad we could get together and just shed a little bit of light on something that I know is top of mind to a lot of people right now. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
That's a wrap for this episode of The Current by TreasureCoast.com. If you enjoyed the conversation, be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. You can find us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Follow us on social media or visit TreasureCoast.com for local events, tips, and news. Have a guest or topic you'd love to hear on the show? Let us know at TreasureCoast.com. Until next time, keep riding the current and enjoying everything the Treasure Coast has to offer. See you soon.